Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 4th of March. Well, there it is. We're about to get new fund money coming in, so that's certainly relevant this particular point, beginning a week, no less. We've already seen that within this stabilized up move, if you want to call it that, we've had a very consistent rise of the gold here, which is really the impetus behind this. And we saw the reset of the shakeout, and it's starting to turn around with this very gentle reset. Now, the DOC red had moved below zero, so we were critically looking for that shakeout to continue to rise, which it did. Well, we saw it at the beginning of Friday's action, even before the open, and it continued through that support of short-term buyers with the rising steel here. Gave it away. At the same time, cyan continued to fade. So there was really no major concern. The best we were looking for was moves that would come back to the ABM yellow, which would present new opportunities for buy. So it's pretty stable at this particular point. Now you have cyan under red, so strong start. This is getting to the yellow here on the extreme, which means that, hey, maybe we're reaching a point where things are getting the start of a new algo run, which would make sense given the time frame that we're at. It's not a whole lot stopping this from moving. There's really nothing in the way. We would have to shrink back way earlier to the previous highs up here in the mid 29s. This is sort of like the peak point from, well, all the way back last November. So despite all of the crazed, ending year drama, that really didn't amount to anything other than just a check on stops, and then boom, right back up, which is how it goes. It was actually a little bit more extended decline there in December than probably was necessary, but after having such a run without any correction at all, it was long overdue. And NASDAQ, likewise, reporting exactly the same. So it's all consistent with what we expected. We had noticed that the euro reaching the 50% off of the dip, they created the DOC spread, and not a coincidence, like I said, when it happens right there at the 50%. Sure enough, that's led to a bit more. Now what we would look for in this particular case is literally you could do a Fibonacci of this, and about the 50% mark is where we would expect it if we don't get a return dive in the DOC red here, and that would indicate that even within the dip there's been some accumulation. What happened with gold was we had the continued breakdown off the DOC short signal right there. It was doing pretty decent, but at this particular point we had the matching of the Azure with gold. So it's perfect that we've had these nice runs, because it's a great opportunity to show how this works when they meet that point. We knew that, hey, it was under a little bit more pressure than normal, and again, for me, any break of that green at that particular point, you know you're going to continue to go a little bit lower. All we've done though is filled back in the positive extremes, which took us all the way back to the low right here. We talked about it before, and then you get some follow through because you don't know that you're not going to hit more stops, and that's exactly what happens. You just run through it. The dip below the red line would take us all the way back to the 120 range, 121. All in line with projections. Okay, intraday 5K chart. I'm going to scroll back to the beginning of the day right there. Again, beautiful with the gold. And this is the, I had a question about this. This is the GAM function paint bar. And underneath it, I can show it to you if I just show you enable. You'll see that I have the Deocon Paint 2. Now that's what's showing these BK numbers as well as the no orange. And you can remove that through the inputs on the Deocon Paint 2. What's significant about this is from the GAM function paint bar, the gold becomes relevant when we're looking at this rising shakeout situation and the rising gold. It gives you an opportunity to follow that trend visually. The plan is to eventually change that to where you start with the gold, and potentially as we get to the end of a gold, it'll print the last bar of a gold before flipping to this. In this particular case, you get the BK right here. And what that's representing is that you've had a break with the DOC. In other words, we've dropped below a significant level. In this case, it was the 7.5. And it appears there, particularly when we have steel and or orange above the negative 13s and the positive 13.5. And that's just that warning that, hey, look out, the trend may be over in this particular case, and sure enough, follows through with the full DOC spread, even with the magenta in that above the 13.5. So this was an early warning from that standpoint, and sure enough, that led to the breakdown. And then, of course, you see there's no orange on this setup. That's just continuation. Finally dipped down right about here, except for we were still in negative 13.5 on the shakeout configuration, and is just about inside of it right as we're getting what would look like an attractive setup. The problem being is that this is just the first initial dip, and usually in that particular case you've got to have a pretty strong up move from there. And the fact that it took place at the 50%, problematic with no reset of the steel, and sure enough, that's exactly what led to the new lows. Now we started to get these X1s, which tend to be buy signals, especially coming off the higher P2. We just couldn't quite get yellow above until, well, you got the establishment of the gold right here, but we were still no closes above the 23%. And by the time we make a new low on that, I'm usually looking for a retrace back up to the breaks of the low, which would be right about here at this last plateauing. One bar isn't enough for significance in my view, and so we get right about there. The differences in this particular case, you end up with the P2 a little bit lower, and certainly from an aggressive standpoint with already having the rising gold, it's attractive, but it's no issue waiting for the 23% in my view. And then a little bit later you get the real X2 P3, which is a much higher pivot of the red, and that just shows that continuation of the red improvement. We've moved to positive shakeout, and boom, that follows through very clean. And pretty much this indicates and shows you that we've had nothing but rising gold throughout the entire run of this. And finally, just look at that ridiculous peak out of DOC above the plus 13.5 on red. That's crazy. You know that's not sustainable, which happened to end right at that 28.17, which is the previous algo level, and it's backfilled from there because it was all positive extremes. So pretty clean from that standpoint. We get the deep red when we're breaking down, and we've gone below the negative 13.5, and we're not looking at a situation where we're getting positive traction out of magenta or red DOS shakeout in this particular case, and that's exactly why that stays in the deeper colors. So that's a little bit of the transition that you see with the GAN function paint bar, and so it's really effective from that standpoint, that it shows you how trend, even on a 5K, then is established into the broader 50K move, where this one, right there on the X1s, right around 27.91, has stayed green throughout the entire run right here, going up. So a little bit different than what the Opus 2 is. It's going to shift some of those a little bit, still finalizing a couple of those details. Needless to say, though, it's still doing fantastic now. Put in another new set of buy configurations right, that was right around 2802 range. And that's what it's currently operating off of at this particular point. And of course with cyan under red on a 50K, there's nothing to do in that particular situation. That's positive strength. So I'll keep pointing out more unique individual setups as they develop with this, as we're like seeing this steel candle develop right there coming off the DOC spread with the reset though of steel. So this could be short-lived from the decline standpoint, particularly when it crosses red. So we'll be looking for that. So quite a difference when you're looking at a protracted downturn with the steel going, and then having the steel reset on a sideways move like that indicates that you're more likely going to break up to the high side. So, always good to see how that flips around and points out the different view of what the market, so you can get similar, what appear to be similar looking readings, but it's very different depending on which side of that DOC red you'll find steel in, or the orange in this particular case, because it lets you know where the strength is residing in this particular case, hiding on the bullish side at this particular point. So as always, I will put up any charts as they're coming along during the day, but strong start to a Monday to begin with. My expectation would be that we would come back and retest that 2817. I always look to this breakout from the daily standpoint anyway, somewhere around that 28-22 range is what I was talking around. But certainly reaching the 2817, we get there. We made it all the way up to 1975, and that was exactly what I talked about as soon as that initial high happened way back. So we're right in line with our expectations. I think it's all good. We'll just keep at it. As always, though, trade well, and we'll talk again later.